Hello everyone and welcome to Canteen Cup. My name is Scott and today I want to talk about communicators for groups and specifically talking maybe about biking groups, but any other emergency preparedness group out there. You have to consider what you need for a communicator. Now I understand a lot of you have no idea about communications, and that's okay. I mean, that's fairly normal. Communicators are a small group of people when considering the whole population. So today's video, I want to talk about what we used to call the DMR, the daily minimum requirements, and that comes off of vitamins. I think one a day vitamins many years ago used to say something like 100% of your daily minimum requirements. And so today we're going to talk about the DMR for communicators. Now, I want to kind of put a caveat in there in that each group should have one proficient communicator. Now, you can have a lot of guys that have radios like walkie-talkies or whatever, but there should be one person in your group that has a slightly higher skill set. And I want to lay out what I consider 10 of the DMR requirements for a communicator. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about is when I'm talking about this singular communicator, I'm talking about a guy who can not only set up communications and talk within your group, but also a guy that can talk to other groups when other means of communications are down. So, this is a slightly higher level of communicator, and every group should have at least one of these guys. And so, that being said, I want to talk about what I consider the minimum requirements for this one communicator. The first thing, of course, is that this person should be generally available to the group. And what I mean by that is, we all have work, we all have families, jobs and whatever. And so can a person be on call 24/7? No. However, if things go bad, that person should be available to help establish communications for the group. What I have seen especially in amateur radio communications, is communicators overbook themselves. In other words, they'll join several different communities in hopes that if one of them gets called up, they get to go. And so it's like a first come, first serve. So, the first thing we want to talk about is, does this person have enough commitment to your group to satisfy your needs? So that's number one. Number two, the communicator should be able to operate his radios without mains power. Now, what do I mean by that? Mains power is the power that goes from the outside utility pole into your home. It's what powers your house, the lights, the furnace, the air conditioning, whatever. When that goes out, your communicator should still be able to operate his radios, which means he either has a generator, battery backup, solar power, whatever, but he has a means to do that. Typically the most economical is to buy a deep cycle marine battery and keep it topped off. You can run radios for a long time off of that battery, and that's a whole nother discussion. So, that being said, I'm going to break the rest of the sections, the rest of the requirements down into two sections. One is going to be VHF, UHF, and the other one is going to be HF, and they're two different animals, so to speak. First, we'll talk about VHF, UHF. And that is very high frequency and ultra high frequency. Those are your mobile radios in your car, your handy talkies, your FRS, GMRS, whatever you decide to use. These are fairly short range, But then with the use of repeaters, they can be extended, and that's a whole nother discussion. Your communicator can help you with that. But the minimum requirements for your communicator, or the person that you're looking to bring into your group as a communicator, he should have VHF, UHF capability. And in some areas, just VHF will get by. In other areas, you need both VHF and UHF. And the reason for that is, again, because these things called repeaters, they use frequencies in either range, and sometimes you got to have both of those. But he has to have, and when I say he, it's he or she, but I'm just using he because it's easier. They should have a radio in their home capable of producing 50 watts of power in either one of these ranges, and they should have a permanent antenna, and I'll post some pictures here. Okay, so you should have seen a picture of a radio and a picture of a permanent antenna. And what I mean by a permanent antenna, it should be mounted on a pole or on a tower somewhere in their home. It should be up in the air. VHF, UHF radios are line of sight. So the higher the antenna is, the better the reception they have. So your communicator should have a radio capable of producing 50 watts and a permanent antenna. And they should be able to talk within a reasonable amount of range. Also, too, your communicator should have a mobile radio. In other words, they should have a mobile radio installed in their car or truck so that they can talk to people while moving. Now, the difference is those antennas are lower to the ground, so they don't have as much range, but you may need to communicate while on the move, and he should have that capability. And I'll put some pictures of a radio mounted and an antenna mounted here. Okay, now a few other skills that he must have is, one, he has to be able to check into a VHF or UHF net. And what that is, that's when a group of communicators get together. There is order and method to check into a net. There's a person called a net control who oversees the operation of the net, and then people check in or check out, and that's how they pass information. There's a procedure, a protocol to do that, and so this person should be able to check into, I mean, if you can check into one VHF net, you can check into them all pretty much. It's that similar. In addition, because this guy is your primary communicator, he should be able to run a VHF net. VHF nets are pretty simple. The format is simple, so he should be able to do that. So that kind of wraps it up, for VHF, UHF. And now we want to go to the HF side. And this is really the more important of the two when you talk about your primary communicator, because this is the method that you're going to use to talk to other groups either within the state or maybe neighboring states. It's a critical skill, and every group should have one of these. So first off, you're going to have to be licensed for this. You're going to have to get an FCC amateur radio license, and they have to be either general class or extra class to use the privileges in the HF frequencies that you want to use. Now, primarily for emergency communications, we're talking in the what we call the 80 meter band or the 40 meter band. And I've discussed that in my PACE video. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail there, but that's where you're going to hang out. So the your communicator, when you're going through your checklist, he should have an HF radio capable of producing a minimum of 50 watts. 100 is preferable, but should be a minimum of 50 watts. And he should have a fairly good sized antenna. And the minimum that I recommend is what they call a G5RV. Your communicator should know what that antenna is. It's about a 102 foot long antenna. It's not the best antenna, but a lot of people have them, and it's, for a minimum antenna, it's pretty good. Ideally, you'd rather have a person with a full-size 80-meter dipole, which is 132 feet, but sometimes they can't get that. So look for a guy with a G5RV antenna. All right. In addition to that, there are different ways to communicate on HF. One is voice, where you talk into a microphone just like you do a CB radio or a handy talkie or whatever. But there's another mode called a digital mode, where communication is done, kind of like your email. It takes your typewritten words, the internet puts them into a format they can use, a protocol, and then it transmits it over the internet. When it gets to the other side, the receiving communicator decrypts it and pops it back up as text you can read. A similar thing happens on HF, and it's called a digital mode. I think every communicator should have the capability of operating a digital mode, and I will say that minimum mode is called PSK31. That's about the easiest one to learn. Now, real quick, why digital over voice? Because a digital signal travels much further, and when band conditions are bad, it's the digital signal that can get through. And you can also send a lot of information over a digital message. So they should have at least a minimum digital requirement. Get a piece of software called FL Digi. It's free, that they can download. And then PSK31 is that you must be able to check into an HF net. Now, HF net takes a slightly higher skill set because you're talking over a much larger area. And again, the protocols are similar, but it takes a little more skill. So a question you might ask is, do you check into any HF voice nets or HF digital nets? And you want to hear a yes to at least one of those, because it is a higher skill set, and you're just not going to pick up a radio and get involved there. So you want to look for somebody that has that capability. And then the final checklist item is that the person must be able to operate in what we call a portable location. In other words, he should be able to pack up his radios, travel to a mountaintop, and set up his radios and operate. And that's called portable operation or field operation. Now, because we're talking about emergencies, if you guys will so-called bug out, then he's going to need to bring his radios with him, and then he needs to be able to set up somewhere and operate. Again, that's a different skill set. It requires a different set of skills, and it has to be practiced, and you have to understand how to operate under the field, because a lot of things are very different between operating in your home and operating in the field. So that's the checklist, and that's really what it is, a checklist. I mean, you can print these out, and then you can, when you are interviewing a potential communicator for your group, you can just go down the list. And who you eventually pick is up to you as a group, but make sure that they satisfy your requirements more than mine. All I'm saying is that this is a good minimum list if you have no idea, what you're looking at or what's out there. So take it for what it's worth. Again, it's just a simple checklist. It gives you a place to start, and you can evaluate from there on what you need or don't need. And like I said in other videos, amateur radio is not the end all. I mean, what you use for your in-group communications does not have to be amateur radio. It could be CB radio, it could be FRS, GMRS, whatever you pick. However, when it comes time to talking in between groups, within a state, within a couple states, then you're pretty much, have to deal with amateur radio with a licensee that has HF privileges. And it's important to be able to gather intelligence from different groups and to support the different groups, and that would be the way to do it. So I hope this helps. I hope you all, can get at least one good communicator in your group, more the merrier, but I hope you all can get at least one good one in there and get them installed and get them trained and practiced, and that you all work together as a team, because that's what's really important. So I hope everybody had a good 2019. I hope 2020 is even a better year. I hope you guys are getting your plans together, getting your teams together, getting your groups together. I hope it's all working for you, and may you have a happy and blessed new year. Stay safe and stay secure, and we'll see you.